Welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. I got my guy Joshua Perry sitting here shotgun. Be joined by Schlegs today as well. Everybody all over the place. A lot of interesting things going on. We are now into the month of May, Joshua. We've got the draft under our belt. The portal has closed up. So I think the biggest question that Ohio State has to look at and answer, okay, there's 6 guys that went in the portal, 3 more since the last time we talked. What does that look like for the roster moving forward? How does that impact it? So we're going to dive into that. Got some stuff going on with Marvin and the Players Union, Fanatics. There's a little bit of juice going on there. The potential settlement of the NCAA in-house case, how that's going to impact college athletes getting paid directly. There is so much here that's going to impact college football, college athletics, and especially Ohio State athletics and Ohio State football. This is kind of the final month, swan song, if you will, of Gene Smith being the AD. He is out, I believe, June 1st, I want to say, is when that official transition happens. So let's start out here ultimately with this, Joshua. We see the portal closing. People talked about 5 to 7 guys getting in, kind of hits right in the middle with 6. Nigel Glover, linebacker, transferred in last year, late transfer out of Northwestern. Given some of the stuff that had happened there, and Patrick moving on from him, so it opened up. He was able to leave. Keon Grays, the wide receiver, ends up leaving, the second-year player, and then Enoch Vamahi, who had been here for, I think, entering his 5th or 6th season on the offensive line. And so when you saw that, like, any surprises in there for you?
No, I think this was pretty much what we had predicted, right? Like, I think it's reps are really difficult to come by in some of these position rooms, and some guys who have been on campus for a little while, who haven't been a part of the rotation, are probably looking at where can I go to have an opportunity to continue my playing career and potentially finish it on the field if I never make it to the next level. Like, if you're a guy who's been on campus for 2 or 3 years, one of the things that you have to think about is, am I comfortable being on the bus potentially for a championship team, knowing that I'm probably not going to play a ton, or do I actually just want to play football, even if I'm probably never going to be with a contender? And it's a difficult decision, but I think that's what a lot of these guys did. The Glover thing was super unique because it was a real short-lived tenure on campus there. But for Enoch Vamahi, Keon Graves, like, these are the type of names that I would have anticipated ending up in the portal. And I'm wishing for the best for those guys because, I do think there's a lot of upside and a lot of potential. But once again, really competitive rooms, it's hard to get on the field.
It is. Keon, I thought, had played pretty well. It's just incredibly tough. And we talked about getting pinched, and he was one of those guys where saw some of the young wide receivers playing really well. Older guys are obviously entrenched and established, and he was trying to carve out that niche. Obviously, couldn't get that done to that degree in the spring. And so I don't hold that against him. I wish him the best to go somewhere else and have success. And honestly, like, if you put him at just about any other Big Ten school, he's probably a top 3 or 4 wide receiver in their depth chart, like day one. And so maybe even a number 2 guy for him
Yeah, I
eventually.
think I think I saw on Twitter earlier today, as we're recording this, that he committed to Cal,
Yeah.
right? And so, I think he's probably going to walk in the door there and be one of their top guys. And that's what a lot of these players are looking at. And it's, like I said, it's about finishing your career on the field. The other part about it is, if you never play, you never have any tape for the NFL guys to evaluate. And
Yeah.
so some of these guys are like, listen, especially if you're in that wide receiver room where you're saying, I'm probably not a first round pick, but who's to say that I'm not a day 2 or a day 3 guy who just cannot get in the rotation because I'm playing with first round picks. You go somewhere else, and now your talent is evident.
Yeah. They get to open it up, and that's big. So wish him the best. Cal, it's a good spot for him. You think
Yep.
about, where they're at. He'll probably go in there and be an impact player for them from Jump Street. He's a great kid, great young man. It's a kid, young man, like, works hard. It's everything you want. It's just a function of, like, hadn't really given that opportunity. He got a ton of reps in the spring. I think he took more reps in the spring game than any other wideout. And so, like, you've been given your chance. Some of it obviously was a windy day, and sometimes the world just doesn't really align for you, Joshua, to be able to go have that success. But you had all those reps. You'd like to see 6, 7 catches, maybe 100 yards in a game-breaking play or something, and that might sway Brian Hartline to slide you in. Doesn't materialize like that. But I really like Keon, hard worker. Everything else, Enoch, he's been here forever. You see that, and the Nigel thing. And this is one of the things, Joshua, like diving into, because we have 2 guys that had left now, who had transferred in here initially in this cycle with Jihad Carter and Nigel Glover. everyone looks at the portal like, Quinshon Judkins and, IGB. Like you look at some Caleb Downs, you look at some of these players, Julian Say, like these elite guys, look at all this. But this is the other side of the portal where you have these guys that jump in here. Now they're going to be going to their third school, and their tenure here was really just a season. They never really get their footing. And this is one of the problems that I think that exists within the portal is when you bring guys in, yeah, things might be going well for a while, looking good, but you never really kind of crest and you're able to kind of carve your niche. And then you're out and on to the next. And it's unfortunate for those players because I don't know what like the future for someone like that holds now.
Yeah, and it is difficult, and I know this from being a guy who was on multiple rosters in the NFL. Like it's hard. You get in, you got to get in with your teammates, coaching staff. People coach differently. You got to learn terminology. You got to learn a playbook, and so you're behind. Like this is a very developmental time for an athlete. You're behind in development when you're shuffling around schools. And then, the spring portal numbers this year were really interesting because there were some people that were predicting that some huge names would be in there,
Yeah.
and it really didn't go like that. It was a lot of guys who were, like I'm probably not playing this fall. I need to go somewhere if I want to. And I think what's difficult about that now is, where are you going to go where you feel like you have an opportunity to step on the field if you're not taking a big step back program wise, if that makes sense. Like, as I mentioned, really difficult trying to play catch up with the playbook. You would rather be out there fighting for a position during spring ball than coming in during training camp and doing it. So I think the spring portal is a tough one to be in, but especially if you're a guy who's been through it a couple of times now, you're going to be way behind.
Yeah. And it's tough. And those guys now got to make a decision. Where are you going to go? Obviously, Gray's landing at Cal, getting a jump. You want to get there early in the summer so you can kind of, they've been learning another system. You're going to have to learn something new. You said, understand, get ingratiated with the campus, your teammates, all of those things, which it can make it pretty darn difficult. And then, like, the flip side of this question is Ohio State, 6 guys left open. There's roster holes now there. I think they're light a couple scholarships. And so there's some potential. But like you said, I don't know if there's anybody in the portal that would be an upgrade over anyone on the roster. And like, are you really going to bring in like a depth piece at this point, someone to compete with your young guys who's an older guy? Like, to me, unless there's a game-changing player, someone that's a home run or a position of great need where there's a starter, Ohio State caliber starter, which I don't believe that there is, I don't know what you do with that.
I'll push back real quick. Is the depth is as intriguing to me as it's ever been. And we've talked about it. Long season, long playoff. If there is a veteran guy that you think can be a depth piece, go get him.
Yeah. And I think if there's a depth, yes, I would agree if you're light at a position. But as you know, Josh, like bringing guys in just to bring guys in, like I've never been a fan of that. And I honestly, if you have some good walk-on players, and we might see this happen in the running back room where, guys who have earned a scholarship and they've played it, you'd rather give it to a guy internally than maybe go outside and try to find someone out there. So love the potential for that. What can happen there. We'll keep that conversation rolling, obviously, throughout the summer, because it's going to be, people have asked about portal acquisitions. Go get a right tackle. Like you can only shop.
Where is he?
Yeah,
Where
dude,
is he?
you're not finding a brand new Ferrari at a used car lot, like on downtown, like, by a body shop and a chop
Off
shop.
of
Those don't
Morse in
exist.
Cleveland.
Yes. You're not doing that. I mean, you're not getting Kobe beef at McDonald's. Like that's where we're at right now. You got to understand what's out there. You got to understand what you're shopping at. Up next, we got Schlegs coming up. We're going to talk about some rookie mini camps, what that's like, how that impacts guys, and how some of the guys at Ohio State, how they will fare. All that coming up next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and now welcomed by my guy, Anthony Schlegel. Like always, if you're watching this on Bally's, we appreciate it. YouTube, leave some comments, like, subscribe on social media. Make sure that you're following all of our stuff and getting as much as we can get out there for you. Schlegel, we got rookie mini camps. They're really starting this weekend. It used to be kind of more split where there was about half that did it the week after the draft. The other half kind of did it 2 weeks later. Most guys, almost all of them now doing it 2 weeks out. What should the guys be ready to experience when they dove into this? Because you've done it now as a player and then as a strength coach in Jacksonville.
We can all piggyback on this from an experience, but I just remember going to the Jets and and you're learning everything, right? You're going to learn linebacker positioning, you're going to learn the special teams, you're going to learn where your fits are. And I think it's a great opportunity for those guys to automatically kind of self-evaluate against what they have from their rookie pool, right? Because it's guys that got drafted, it's undrafted free agents. It's also, you're going to have some guys that were potentially on the practice squad that will be involved in this rookie mini camp because they weren't on the active roster. They were one of the 7D, right? Because you can now have more guys on the practice squad that way. So they're also going to be taking advantage of this opportunity. And guess what? Every time you get to go out there, you have an opportunity to make an impression. And that's the number one thing. So when going to this type of camp, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. Some are going to be significantly harder than others, but it's up to them. They are now a pro. They don't have the Coach Mix of the world walking them through. They've been off doing combine training, and combine training looks very different than football training. And so now it's been up to them from the combine and pro day to start to accumulate some volume in the running, right? And those things to be able to handle the volume that you're going to get in a really quick 2 to 3 day bout rookie mini camp. So that would be first and foremost.
Like the expression "drinking from a fire hose" I've heard thrown around, Schlegs. I know you're a guy that can really gobble it down. Like, explain to me what that is.
Of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing though, Bob. I think that this is where Ohio State, and again, when you talk to recruits or people in the portal coming, like, what's the competitive advantage of going to an Ohio State? It's that you're getting taught and inundated with this type of scheme and how do you do a playbook and that type of development that sets you up for success. Our guys are very, I would say they have a high football acumen. So being able to go into a new program and learn that, yes, it's going to be a lot, right, to digest. They're going to have a plan on how they, feed you that information in that playbook, but you got to be hungry for that information. And it's the guys that can take it from classroom to field, right? Like those are the ones that separate themselves because they're evaluating this. They evaluated in the process before they acquired you. They're now evaluating it. Again, it could be pressure testing, and everybody's a little bit different. We're going to pressure test the crap out of them, give them a bunch of stuff, and see who can translate it from the classroom to the field very, very quickly. Because guess what? That happens in season. Like you have your main playbook, and then as you adjust throughout the season, it's going to be, we got to go from classroom to field, and it might be even game time type stuff. Like, hey man, we got drawback this that we had in camp for this particular thing that we are now seeing that we're getting in a game. Can you do that? That's kind of pressure testing. But again, physically, right? If you're not able to physically go out there and do that day in and day out and know how to take care of your body, know what you need to eat, know how you need to hydrate, etc., you can't do it, right? So those are all the things that go into this process.
Schlegs, I want to ask you this philosophically, because I saw a couple years ago, there were some teams that started taking basically the on-field portion away from rookie mini camps and even veteran mini camp at the end of OTAs, because they're like, we've seen soft tissue injuries, we've seen some different things. To your point, guys haven't been trained to play football. They're not in the proper shape. Do you think that, and I know there's an academic approach to that of trying, do you miss the evaluation? Do you think there are missed opportunities for guys who don't get to go out there and compete on the field because they're trying to make sure we prevent the hammies from being all torn up?
It's a double-edged sword, guys. I mean, because yes, you want to prevent things, but you also want to see competition good be good. And that's where guys, I can honestly say in today's world, like I would never have made it because I was a guy that needed the pads. I was not a shorts guy. I was a pads guy. And that's just the facts. I mean, God didn't give me the abilities that he gave you guys. I mean, I needed to be able to show it and like stop the run. And that, like, I can't do that in just like a spider, and so what it's done is like, and here's the unique thing about the NFL compared to college. College, everything about these guys every day. We're testing hamstring strength. Like there is, I mean, you go back and look at what Coach Mick and Dan Sensor and AT have done in our strength program. It's beautiful, man. Like every week, the accumulation of volume to get to that type of practice that you first start spring ball, and then what they did in the first week of spring ball, because you can't replicate football within a training, the training confines, because you're on the field for 2 to 2.5 hours. Like you can't replicate that while also being in the weight room, but you're testing these things. You're testing the hamstrings and the groin and the glutes and jumping and all these different things. you know everything about them. And then when they go to you in the NFL, like you don't, like you evaluate them. But then it's like, well, we also have to have this guy over time. And there might be some weaknesses. This is everybody, guys. This is everybody that we're talking about. So there is a fine line between competitive excellence and also seeing what they can do while also keeping it safe, because you also have to know that the primary objective is to get to camp with the best 90 possible. And how do you do that in the safest manner? And that's why I just look at it. It's you know, as a strength practitioner or anybody in that field, the goal is that you can, through training and practice, that you can have the healthiest roster so that you can make the best objective and subjective observation as to who needs to be the 70 people on your roster. You can't do that when they're hurt.
Are you telling me, Schlegs and Joshua, like they don't go at it anymore in mini camp? Like my rookie mini camp in Dallas was basically, I mean, we had 2 days.
Times have changed, man. I know.
5 practices. Dude, I was so bruised and beaten up from that. I mean, I had the jersey, like I had bruising all over my boobs, Joshua. Like they're grabbing, punching each other. I mean, guys are fighting to make a roster. You're telling me that doesn't happen? Like it was awful.
When I went through, and I don't know how they were, like you've been there more recently than me. When I went through it, it was you had a practice morning session, and then you had a walkthrough afternoon session. Like it was you can't do true 2-a-days anymore. So it was practice walkthrough, and some teams have completely gone straight to walkthrough for both sessions, and we're going to spend more time in the meeting room because we don't want our guys to be banged and battered up, which you ain't even putting the pads on anyway. So, like, go run around a little bit.
How you getting? My thing is like, so how are you getting any sort of evaluation?
You can't. I don't think you can.
Okay.
I don't think
from a walkthrough, you can't do it.
And here's the thing: like times have changed. I mean, Bob, you and I were there in the early 2000s, and as you went through the league, like there's an evolution to it. But I think that there is. You also have to put it on the ownership of the players to make sure that their bodies are prepared, so you can evaluate them. Because I mean, regardless of where you are, like you need reps, you need continuity between a quarterback and a wide receiver. The only way you can get that is not through walkthrough, it's through full speed reps, right? And you got to make sure that the tissue quality is prepared to where you can go do that. Now, the length of which that you do that is something that you can pull back from, but
even the girth,
you still got to go. You still got to go, right? You still got to go see fits. You still got to go see who takes the steps in the right direction. You still got to go see who can command a huddle, right? Like you still got to go see who can last for, again, you and I, Bob, when we did it, it was a morning, an afternoon, and then a walkthrough. And that walkthrough was kind of your special team. And then they would evolve that into like the back end of a practice. And then you would have basically like 2 mini practices, because it always went like your punt, right? At the very beginning, punt, return. And then you went to Indy and you did that. And then you came together. And then they sprinkled in another special team in there later on. And they went through a team segment. And I'll just say this from the rookie minicamp perspective, condensing it and making more intense and less volume is the way to go, in my opinion. Especially when people haven't accumulated that volume, being more intense is the best way, but just shortening the duration of time that you're on the field is better. But you still have to have it to be able to make an evaluation, because you are a business, and guess what? You get paid to do what it is that you do.
I'll say this because I know we're running over time, but I have been in camps where, they brought in the tryout guys, and one of those guys ends up being on the practice squad for the season. And I don't think you should govern your league based off of what's best for a tryout guy. But if you're not on the field getting in work, that guy never makes a practice squad. And I think that's a shame.
It's tough for the free agents, undrafted guys, like to be able to make a roster. That seems incredibly difficult now, given how it's set up. But it's either here or there. It's the way the league's going. It's the way college football is going. And we'll move through that. Speaking of another guy who's going to be heading out to Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr. You going to be able to buy his jersey this year? I don't know. We'll find out next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back in to the program and talking with some rookie mini camps. Guys going out, well, the number 4 overall pick in the NFL draft, Mr. Marvin Harrison Jr. will be heading out to Arizona. And a lot of Buckeye fans, maybe some Cardinals fans, Joshua, if there's any of those out there, they want to get their Marvin Harrison Jr. jersey. They want to get some of the gear, get some of the swag. And for those of you who don't know, the way that it works, and this is now coming to a college basically near you in some shape or fashion, and this is going to be good, is the NFLPA and the NFL collectively have an agreement where they license out the stuff. You get the players' names, you sell the jerseys. A portion of the jersey sales goes to all the players to be spread out. And then of your jersey that's maybe individually sold, you get a lion's share of that as well. The league gets some because the brands and marks. And so everybody gets this pool of dollars. But you have to sign up and opt in to be part of that. And that goes for like the video games and all different stuff that they do. And every player's been a part of it. Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. has not signed his NFLPA licensing agreement that allows the league and union, Players Inc., to collectively monetize, his name, image, and likeness, and he'll get a portion of that. It's interesting, Joshua, because early on at Ohio State, I wanted to get a jersey for my kids. I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I went into the team shop. I said, hey, this is easy money now. They've got this here. I'd like to get a Marvin Harrison Jr. jersey. And they said, we don't sell those. I said, what do you mean? He's the most popular player on the team. And this was 2 years ago. What do you mean? Like, how's this real? And they go, he didn't sign up for it. And so I go, I asked Marvin, he goes, yeah, my dad said, don't worry about it. We're not going to do this. And worry about football. I'm like, you don't really have to even do anything. You're just saying, so you can sell my jersey and they send you a check. It's not like you're doing appearances or anything else part of it. And so he's always kind of had a little different take on it. And coming from a family that has means and has been through this process before, like, you maybe don't necessarily get pressured or bullied or whatever it looks like into doing something you don't want to do. And I don't know if it got sideways, Joshua, or what all has happened with this, but it's kind of unique given the fact that he's a super high profile guy from Ohio State, Blitnikoff winner, Heisman Trophy final, everything else. And if you want his jersey as of now, you're not going to be able to get it.
Yeah, it is one of the more intriguing things that we've seen. And it's almost like some of the commentary is like, yeah, he's just waiting. He's just looking some things over. Like, yeah, it's probably going to happen, but we're just, we got to iron out some issues. And to your point, and I've been through it as well, like, what issue is there to iron out? It is very standard. You sign the thing, they give you a check, and people can buy the stuff. And it's pretty much that easy. And I think the other part of the licensing too is like a lot of the companies that end up working with the NFL, it makes it really streamlined for you to do deals with them too. So, it is this intriguing thing about Marv. Like, maybe he is that just like, mystical mystery man who does not give a damn about making a check outside of being a great football player. I don't necessarily know if that would be me in that situation, but we got to wait and see.
It's very unique, and he's focused on being a great player, which he has been. But like you talked about looking it over, I mean, every player signs the same agreement. It's not like there's variations of this, or you're going to send them back a red line document saying these are some changes. Like, the contract is the contract. Here it is. Sign it. You're ready to go. It's a little bit like your rookie deal. They're going to put some numbers in there, and different teams may have a couple like little things, but essentially the contracts, I mean, they all kind of look the same language wise, and structurally it's really hard to get certain boilerplate language out of there. It's unique. And the one thing about Marv, and he's talked to the media, and heck, I might try to get him on here even because he's a really intelligent and articulate guy. But it adds to the mystery, Joshua, because he doesn't really speak to the media all that much. Like, he didn't talk at the combine. I mean, he says a couple of things and he's very articulate when he speaks. It's just, he doesn't seem like a guy that really gravitates and leans into the limelight, very similar to his father.
No, I mean, he is like he's a real old school football guy. It's one of the most unique things to see because, I mean, some of these cats nowadays cannot wait to get their face in front of a camera, to have a microphone, pointed at them. Like, they want quotes, they want viral clips, they want moments. And he's like, I want to play ball. And I think there is a value and a benefit of, probably talking to the media a little bit more, because you can get out and control your own narratives about different things and that whole, but what is there to control for him too? Like, he's really good. And as long as he shows up, like, what else are you going to say? It's strange, man. He's just a different bird. He's cut from a different cloth.
It really is. And especially what's even more ironic, Joshua, and I don't like to stereotype or categorize people with, positions or whatever it is, but the position he plays is kind of the position that I don't know if it encourages that, if it recruits that. Like it's the position of the diva, if you want to say the Devo, playing wide receiver, and he's like kind of the antithesis of the modern wideout.
Is the diva wide receiver, is that nature or nurture? Are
Yeah.
you born that way or are you taught that behavior? I'd be curious to examine that. I mean, to lean into that a little bit more. I mean, have you ever seen the dude dress? Like he dresses like a dude that you feel like would have a completely different persona,
Yeah.
right? Like this dude is constantly dressed to the nines. He's got all the newest stuff on, and it's like, nope, I'm just here. I'm here. You can look at me, and that's it. And not in a flagrant way, like, don't talk to me type situation. But he's like, I'm just not going to make a ton of waves.
It's wild because, like you said, that there's so many things that don't align with what you would think, like the stereotype, top flight receiver at Ohio State, really talented guy, top 5 overall draft pick. You look at how he dresses. I mean, and he dresses in some aggressive gear. Like he had those purple giant, like Dr. Seuss, like Cat in the Hat shoes on or whatever.
Dude, and
Like,
the pants are big, and it's
yes,
like, I mean, everything.
it's and so you see all that, and you're like, this is a guy that would be like me, 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 me. Like, just give me the attention. And this is coming from a guy who, I played with Terrell Owens. I also played with Calvin Johnson, who has a lot more Marv to
Right.
him, than probably T.O., where, I mean, he had a shirt that said, I love me some me. Like, I mean, it's trying to like balance these things. It's like, Marv, like, it's a really interesting case study of like trying to study him and figure out, like, you're obviously a guy that's fashionable. Like, you do care about some things. It's not like you want to be invisible, but in the same sense, you're not out there really trying to get out and get in front of anybody.
No, and to take that a step further too, in the times where he has spoken to the media, or like, everybody, the networks want to do features with him because obviously he's phenomenal, but he's got the story of the father who is phenomenal as well. He's got a lot of really good stuff to say when he's talking.
Yeah.
Like he's a very thoughtful guy. I love hearing about his process. Like you can tell how serious he is about the sport, but you just don't know when you're gonna get the opportunity to hear from
Yeah.
the guy.
And and him going to the Arizona market, Joshua, and like not to throw another stereotype out there, it's not a
No,
place
go
where he's
ahead.
probably going to get a lot of cameras thrown in his face. Like New York, Dallas, you know, going to Arizona, it's like, maybe not. So he can probably be his anonymous self out there, love it, go have 1,500 yards receiving and 80 catches a year, make Pro Bowls, and go about his way. And hopefully they win with Kyler Murray as their quarterback. All right, up next, we're going to go around the world of college football. Dion, always in the news. Joshua, always getting some things going out there in Colorado. Got some mixed feelings, your son, some of the stuff that's being said about guys. We'll dive into that next. Welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. Appreciate you watching, tuning in. Love it. Love the support. Love the comments, the questions, everything from you. Always feel free to reach out to Joshua and I. A variety of social media mediums. Answer all your questions. Answer them here on the show. Deion Sanders, he's out there again. Joshua, it's like for a guy that doesn't ever leave to recruit, and as we just talked about Marvin Harrison, like Harrison Jr., the anonymous star. I mean, now you see the other side of the yin and the yang on this. So if someone's giving a lot of oxygen out there by not consuming it, Dion likes to kind of swallow a lot. I'm going to give you the floor on everything that's going on because I know you've been talking about this on your show.
Yeah, it's one of the more intriguing things. So like the basically where this all started this past week for Dion is The Athletic came out with an article that interviewed some of the players that had departed from the program. It was unprecedented departures. He had processed players out of the program in a way that had never been seen before, and we had heard the Dion side of it certainly, but had not heard a ton from the players. Now, when these things happen, and Bobby, you well know this, like guys who get processed out or guys who end up transferring, probably weren't the greatest of players and therefore didn't have the greatest of experiences on campus. So it wasn't like the nicest depiction of Dion and his program. And so he had some things to say about it, certainly. His son Shador gets on socials, and there was a quote from one of the players that was featured in the article. And Shador is like, I never met bro. He must have been super mid. Right. And
So
I'm
terrible.
okay. Well, but people took exception to that. In particular, a teammate of the player that was quoted took exception to it. So he starts jumping in there. Then somebody screenshots this teammate. So not even the guy that the Athletic talked to, a different guy at the new school. They screenshot his stats and they put it up there. And Prime hops in and he starts throwing shade at the kid. And then somebody says something about Shador, and Prime hops in talking about my son's going to be a top 5 pick. What's your son getting ready to do? Here's my thing about it. I think Shador is wrong inserting himself into it. And I understand that you want to defend your program and you want to defend the way that your father is going about business, but that didn't pertain to you. It really had nothing to do with you. And it felt like you were starting stuff on the timeline just for the sake of it. I had an issue with Prime quote tweeting the kid's stats and kind of making fun of it, and I'll get into that for a sec. What I don't have a problem with is Prime defending his son, because you don't come for children, and I feel strongly about that now that I do have a child of my own. But it's interesting to me because there was a time for Prime where any criticisms that people had, he was directly in control of what he could do about it, right? Like as a player, you just go out there and you can play and you can back your play up, you can back your words up with your play. And when you're a coach, you're dependent on 100 kids to not screw things up for you. And winning one game in conference is not a spot that he certainly wants to be in, especially the way that he was talking, especially the way he's going about things. Mind you, about 40 players have left that program since the end of the season, 20 of which he brought in. So they must have been the fake Louis bags and not the real ones that he said that they were going to bring.
The Fooey bags?
But they were the Fooey bags. My biggest issue with kind of going after the kid online is Dion has told us that he is the uplifting young men coach, and in particular, uplifting young Black men.
Yeah.
And that moment was not uplifting at all. And so, again, he has been the I'm going to talk, but I'm going to back it up guy. And that is one place where I feel like he's got to back it up is you have to, regardless of positive, negative, whatever, you got to be bigger than the kids and you have to continue to uplift. So I didn't think that was a great moment for him. The reality of this situation is we'll see how it all plays out this fall, because that's going to control the whole narrative moving forward. If they're a much better team, nobody's talking about this situation. If they're not a good team, everybody's going to be talking about, hey, remember in May when that article came out and they all got butthurt online? Yeah, that's why.
I mean, what if they're just like super mid, to steal a line from
super mid?
Super mid.
Super mid ain't getting it done either. I feel like when you cycle through about 70 kids, you can't be super mid anymore.
No, if you're doing something the way that no one else is doing it, you can't be average. You have to be great. Because if not, they're like, well, just do it like everybody else and you can be average with them. Like that's easy. All right. We're going to get back more into this because someone brought up a question about this when we had Lathan on a couple of weeks ago. And I wanted to get back into it because I think it ties right in to what was being said here. And so as we go with our tailgate talk, our questions from listeners coming up next, we're going to dive right into that because I think it's really good when you juxtapose this to Ohio State right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, back in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. And now we get our favorite segment each and every week, our tailgate talk, where we answer your questions coming to us through Twitter. Throw it out there, usually on the weekend, at BCarp3, at JEP_RIP.
RIP_JEP.
Sorry, my dyslexia is taken over, but you know what? I almost got it there for you, Joshua. So someone asked the question, we had Lathan Ransom on, and people were like, what a great representation of Ohio State. Phenomenal human being, great young man, and really good football player. But outside of that, he talked a lot about like the brotherhood and everything. Like we've talked with, Cade and Steele, like a bunch of guys that all said the brotherhood. And I got a chance to play New England my last season with Tom Brady, the GOAT, greatest player. Guy comes up. I get signed, week into free agency, week and a half. I'm not grade A Joshua off the market day night. Like, hey, let's wait till this dies down a little bit. 9, 10 days in, hey, we got to we need a linebacker. Bobby, come on in here. I come up, Tom Brady, hey, Bobby, nice to meet you. Mike Vrabel's told me a lot about you. We're really excited to have you on the team. Talks a little bit about like prospective role. And he's like, like introduces himself first and last name. And I look over at Gerard Mayo. I'm like, is he messing with me? Like, is this real? Like, I'm like, he's like, what? And I'm like, I know who you are, dude. Like, you don't have to do first, last on this. Like, hey, Bobby, Tom, like, nice to meet you. That would have been fine.
Yep.
And so I see that you played with, Cardell, JT Barrett. I played with Troy Smith, very charismatic leader. I played with Romo in the NFL. Like, you played with Phillip
Yep.
Rivers, and people
Yeah,
like
played with
had these
Andrew
varying
Luck.
opinions. But like all those dudes, they're dogs in their own way, and they're great leaders and connectors. And my thing, as you look at this and juxtapose it, is Ohio State. You hear Lathan talking about the brotherhood and everything else, and how it's
Yes.
such a tight knit room. We had him on my radio show. He sat down for 2 segments with us. It was phenomenal, and just talked about like in the NIL world. I asked him, "Is it different? Transfer? Is it different?" He goes, "This is the tightest team I've been a part of," and it comes down to the brotherhood. And my question is for Dion with Shador, your son, who you want to be a top 5 quarterback, and he may have all the physical attributes and mental acuities to do so. But so much of especially that position comes down to leadership.
Yeah,
And like
buddy.
if you're talking about like some guy on your team being quote super mid, like and he wasn't a big part of it, like the best leaders and the best players, they know everybody's name and what their role. And I don't know how Dion, like you said, is uplifting young men, especially young black men. It's like, is that the example you want your son to set of how he's going to be a leader?
It's a really good side of it, and I've discussed this side too. But Shador, I think it's twofold. If he goes out there in the fall, it looks like there's a ton of chemistry, things are going well. It'll be a question for him, but he can answer that and probably move on past it.
Yeah.
If things aren't as good, it's going to be a bigger question for him, and he's going to have a really good answer to it. It's a shame that it has to be a question now because he
Yes.
inserted himself into a discussion online. Because before, nobody was talking about whether Shador was a good teammate, whether he was a quarterbacky type of quarterback, right? Like nobody asked that question. But when you say, oh, I don't know, bro, so he must have been super mid, that is to your point. Not when I was signed to Indianapolis, I came in on the P squad and I'm sitting in the locker room and Andrew Luck comes up to me and he introduces
Hey,
himself
Joshua.
and
Nice to meet
yeah,
you.
no, pretty much. And but he sat down with me for 10 minutes and like he's like, if you have questions, anything you want me to answer, and like, give me recommendations about places around town, whatever. That's what people expect the quarterback to be. And so I think it's unfortunate for Shador that he would even open the door for folks to ask those types of questions about him.
And it stinks because that's one of the things that Kyler Murray's had now, like similar
Yeah.
questions about that. And it's not, hey, can the guy play football? Is the guy, is he smart enough? Is he athletic enough? It's like, are you a good enough leader? Like, do people
Yeah.
rally around you? And at that position, like that's your ability to know everybody on the team. It matters a lot. And that's that brotherhood, that chemistry. The thing that I always say makes Ohio State really stinking special is the
Yep.
fact that all those guys know each other and that you could be the 4th walk-on offensive lineman going up to Marv and like talking like, dude, he's treating you as if, you're Paris Johnson out there going to be a first round NFL pick, left tackle. Like,
Yep.
and that's what makes it special. It's like you said, the Shador, and if he plays well, your play excuses just about all your behavior. That's the one thing we know in this world. But it just stinks because I don't know him, but I
Right.
want him to be everything that he should be. And I know a
Right.
lot of Dion's teammates loved him. And so the quarterback, it's not corner, it's not receiver, it's not like any of the other ones.
So I brought that up, right? It's not corner, and I think that might be a disconnect for Prime because his kids are following his lead, but
Yeah.
Prime was out there on the island doing his own thing. I don't
Oh,
think
yeah.
people care about how great of a teammate you are when you play on an island. When you're in the thick of it as a quarterback, you have to be that, and I like that's probably a little bit over Prime's head just because his paradigm from when he was a player was so
Yeah.
different than what Shador has to do.
Well, and you think about it, like no one's really probably asking Dion questions about Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman had to answer questions about Dion, about Michael,
Right.
like about the quarterback gets all the questions. And like, you're almost kind of like the surrogate father of the team. Like, explain this behavior. Is this a distraction? You become the de facto mouthpiece. And whether that's right or wrong, it's just what it is. And so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that goes part and parcel with that. I want to get one other quick question in here, Joshua, before we get going. Oregon landed 2 big time transfers this week. I mean, are they the next biggest threat in the Big Ten? And is their NIL situation so great that that's going to be a big issue for Ohio State?
Yeah, I think the target always has to be on Michigan. Team up north is always the biggest threat, whether you feel like they're the threat or not. And I think everybody understands that. Outside of that, it doesn't feel like it's Penn State right now. It's not Michigan State like it was when I was in school. It certainly feels like Oregon is gearing up. And so, yes, the NIL component of it makes it more dangerous. Dan Lanning, I think, is a phenomenal young coach, but that's a team that is very talented. And I feel like those guys, they've struggled to beat their rivals. They don't have a big win under Dan Lanning yet. Like, I think they want to make this year a special year.
Absolutely. Well, coming up next, we're going to wrap up the segment. We got a little betting segment brought to you by Tipico. We'll get into that. Talk a little UFL and some Buckeyes that are going to be playing there. Coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, getting ready to wrap up the Bobby Carpenter Show here, and we're going to talk a little betting with Tipico Sportsbook. They're going to change the way that you bet with their new Tipico Rewards program. The more you bet, the more you earn, the more you can win. And to celebrate this big play, well, we're holding our own company-wide contest to see which of our shows can climb the leaderboard to prove they're the best bettors right here at Big Play. The winning show may even give out some bet credits to their listeners each and every month. So be sure to follow along with all the Big Play personalities on social media to lock in your bets with us all week long. Remember, must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. The UFL, Joshua, they got 2 teams that are sitting at the top of the heap, the Birmingham Stallions, the St. Louis Battlehawks. Birmingham, I believe, 6-0, St. Louis 5-1. That game coming up here this week. Birmingham, they've got Marcus Ball, they've got Drew Chrisman, they've got Benjamin Victor, a couple of offensive threats there. Honestly, these games, some of the top-rated games are getting close to 1 million people watching, which is better than a lot of MLB. It's better than a lot of some of the NBA playoff games, NHL playoff games. I would have to say it's looking like a success, and we'll see with this big game coming up how many people tune into that.
Yeah, man. Shout out to a couple of my guys too, and Devin Gardner and Jake Butt, both Michigan Wolverines, but they're both doing UFL games. They've been phenomenal. I've watched some of the broadcasts there. It's fun. And like, spring football typically has not been a thing that people have enjoyed because a lot of folks, at least in the past, they tried to position it as a true competitor to the NFL. And the one thing that we know is that there is not really a competitor for the NFL. So why not come up with a fun league that's innovative, that gives you access in the broadcast to the huddle and to the play calls and up in the booth with the coaches. I think it's great. And then you get to see some fan favorites too. Like Marcus Ball was always fun to watch. I love Ben Victor. He was one of my favorite underrated players. And Drew Chrisman's got some really good content out there on socials too. So he's a fun follow if you want to get into some of that. So I think they put a good thing together there.
I mean, I'm rolling with Birmingham. You mentioned Marcus Ball and Benjamin Victor. Both of those guys have significant catches in Penn State defeats. If you think about Marcus, the seam over the middle, and Victor, his winding and weaving all the way down the field, I just kind of put that together. Both of those guys have some Nittany Lion pelts on the wall and probably aided in James Franklin's drinking problem after those.
That is amazing. Shout out to both of those guys there, man. That is awesome.
Yeah, well done. Well, Joshua, thank you again. We appreciate it, taking some time up there in Toledo, the border city, spending some time with family. We appreciate it as always. Tune in next week again to the Bobby Carpenter Show. We appreciate you watching.